Can I just give you a quick assessment? Because I think, he's all the noise out there. The U.S. economy is kind of like a ship that's going, it's growing, X the shutdown, 2 to 2.5%, and that's going to keep on going for a while. Then you have all this other noise, okay? Geopolitical noise, Brexit noise, what's the Fed going to do? I'll talk about that in a second. Shutdown, trade, and they're kind of like boiling the waters in front of that ship. So eventually that may very well cause a slowdown or a recession. And I don't know if it's 2020 or 2021, but the range of possibilities is broader and the range of bad outcomes is increasing.
Yeah, but if something really good happens, you get a tailwind? If we did something...
Yes. Yeah.
So then it's not 2 to 2.5, then we're back to maybe 3 again.
It's possible. And I think the Fed will look at what's going on. I mean, my guess is they'll probably pause now, but if they raise rates again in 6 months or so because we're growing at 2.5%, that's still a good thing.
Let me ask you.
I always tell the what is much more important. The why is much more important than the what.
But that's if the Fed reads the economy right. That's the big question. That's where people have
my guess is with all of the stuff that's going on today, they're going to wait a little bit.
But Jamie,
if you have growth of 2% in the first quarter, adjusted for the shutdown, then maybe 2.5% in the second quarter, that is a good thing. And even the IMF report, it was reported very negative. They reduced their global growth forecast from 3.7 to 3.5. Most of the negative coming out of Europe.
The question is, now that we're back to 2.5%, how do you think about that view a year ago?
Absolutely. If you make a list, I mean, sometimes we look at ourselves, like what can we do better as a nation? Not just yelling and screaming about other people and not being afraid about geopolitics or that. But what can we do? We don't get infrastructure done right. The tax reform is critical to have a cumulative buildup of capital in the United States and reinvest it here. We don't get our kids apprenticeships to get them jobs. Our healthcare system costs too much. It's a great healthcare system, best in the world, 18.5% of GDP. Okay, we don't give our felons jobs. If we looked at our own issues and fixed them, we'd be growing at 3%. And to me, and reform was part of that. Regulatory reform, tax reform, small business formation was lower than it's ever been in a major American recovery, mostly because of regulations and lack of access to capital. And so to me, I always look at something, what can you do better yourself? Like analyze it. But the thing that we have to do is facts, analysis, detail, not just slogans. And then policy that's well done and explained to the American public as opposed to slogans and policy that's implemented that doesn't work. I mean, you made a list of the policies that we've done in America for the last 50 years that were complete and utter failures, and they're still there. I mean, we should acknowledge it and fix it. And you have a...
What's at the top of the list?
Well, I would put on the next round is immigration reform. It's hurting this country dramatically, including merit-based, more merit-based. Infrastructure. I've mentioned you guys before, 8 years to put a man on the moon, 12 years to get the permits to build a bridge. Education, and think of education where kids graduate high school, vocational school, with apprenticeships and training that gets them a very good job. Okay, and healthcare, I think, is a little more complicated, but we need to work on that. Regulatory reform still needs to be done. We have in place regulations that are being followed. Basically they're bureaucracy. The American public school it's bureaucracy. It's not, and it's some form of sinecure. And sometimes they're regulations are state and local. They're not federal. So if you travel with me one day and visit a bunch of small businesses and ask them what they have to go through to open a small business, how many licenses they have to get, how many times they get audited by the city, the state, or the federal government, for a store with 10 people working in it. So it's us. We did this to ourselves.
Jamie, is there anything to the notion that we're trying to come out of the extraordinary measures after the financial crisis? We make it back to 2 and change, and things start slowing. Is there anything to the notion that we've built up so much debt that the slightest increase in rates causes the debt service to go up to where it's unsustainable, and you start choking off at much lower levels, choking off.
No, but this is, even Seth Klarman thinks that we're going to get to that.
Yeah, so Seth made a list of a lot of the things and the geopolitical stuff that's kind of mounting serious issues. The fiscal issue is a real issue, and it's really got to be dealt with. It's not an immediate issue. So our debt to GDP is like 80%, on its way to 100, on its way to 120. We can afford all that, but it becomes a hockey stick in about 15 years. And it's all related to entitlements. So smart people would say, my God, we've got an issue. Let's get together and figure out how to give medical to our people and do it much more efficiently than the system we have in place.